one think tank person that I spoke to from a rather conservative think tank was saying that he's worried that it could be another Kent state situation. And this is a scar on the conscience of America from the Vietnam era, when a big anti-war protest in 1970 ended up with the Ohio National Guard firing on students and killing 4 students. So there is the potential for escalation here.
There has been an escalation in the latest proposals from the Trump administration to supposedly bring law and order to the streets of Washington, D.C. According to a White House official, National Guard troops have been deployed in an effort to mitigate crime, and they're going to begin carrying firearms from today. Donald Trump has said Chicago may be next. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, has been speaking in the past hour about that plan to deploy the National Guard in Chicago.
So let me speak to all Illinoisans and to all Chicagoans right now. Hopefully the president will reconsider this dangerous and misguided encroachment upon our state and our city's sovereignty. Hopefully rational voices, if there are any left inside the White House or the Pentagon, will prevail in the coming days. If not, we are going to face an unprecedented and difficult time ahead.
Well, that was the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. Let's talk to David Charter, the assistant US editor of The Times. Good evening to you, David.
Good evening from Washington, D.C.
So, I mean, Washington, D.C. itself, we heard last week about the deployment of the National Guard. Now, apparently, they're armed.
Yes, not all of them, but several troops have been spotted carrying handguns very prominently on their waists. And I'm told that some have been seen carrying rifles as well, although I haven't personally seen those or even photographs of those, to be honest. But it was discussed in the Oval Office today when Donald Trump was signing some executive orders, to do with his domestic law and order crackdown. And he discussed it with Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, who has, of course, his department covers the National Guard. And Hegseth yet said it was only common sense that they should be armed on the streets of Washington, D.C. And there wasn't discussion of this in the Oval Office, but there is a lot of discussion on the streets of Washington, D.C., especially as it was back to school today. All the district schools went back. And there are reports from some schools of missing children where families are nervous that they might get caught up in one of the checkpoints that are being run by the authorities. Just pulling over cars and checking people has been going on. I've not heard of it today on the school run, I have to say, but it has certainly talk about it is affecting city life as people try and go about their business.
And I mean, what about the justification for this? Clearly, Washington, as with all big cities, has its share of crime, but I mean, I was in Washington, D.C. last year. It didn't feel like a particularly lawless city.
Well, it's certainly not the hellhole that President Trump has painted it out to be as part of his justification, I suppose, for the declaring an emergency and sending in the troops. He's got a lot more power over the district because it's not a state. It doesn't have the same level of control that the state authorities have elsewhere in the country. He is nominally the head of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., actually. But rather amazingly, some of the troops that have been volunteered by Republican states to come and do the patrols come from places like Tennessee and Ohio. And at least according to the FBI statistics, the most dangerous cities in the whole of America are actually in Tennessee and Ohio. That's Memphis and Cleveland. So they're the ones with the highest murder rates last year. So we've got this extraordinary situation where National Guard from those cities are patrolling on the streets of Washington, D.C., which is not completely crime-free. There are worrying crimes that go on here, but in American terms, it's quite a long way down the list.
And how have people in Washington reacted to this? Because as you said, I mean, you described there this idea of them actually setting up roadblocks and so on.
Well, as I say, there'd been nervousness about the return to school. Parents are advising their teenagers not to mess about at lunchtime and come straight home, that kind of thing, in case they get caught up in anything. But I haven't heard any reports of the back to school getting more tangled up in the troops than that. But Donald Trump is, of course, loudly proclaiming that the restaurants are packed and everyone's enjoying going out again. The statistics tell a slightly different story, that restaurant owners are saying they're not getting quite the customers they thought in some areas, because there is a lot of anger amongst some of the district's citizens about the presence of the troops. It's a very unusual situation in America to have armed troops on the streets. You see, it normally happens in times of real emergency, if the state governor, or the mayor in this case, is losing control of the city. And so one think tank person that I spoke to, from a rather conservative think tank, was saying that he's worried that it could be another Kent state situation. And this is a scar on the conscience of America from the Vietnam era, when a big anti-war protest in 1970 ended up with the Ohio National Guard firing on students and killing 4 students. So there is the potential for escalation here, but so far there's not been huge demonstrations against it, just rather nervousness among many people, and I have to say quite a lot of arrests. We've been monitoring some of the people coming up in federal court. They're not always tremendously high level cases. They're like public drinking or drunkenness. Threats against the president was another one. Somebody was cursing out President Trump, got themselves arrested. And you've got to watch out. If you make a threat to the life of the president, that can bring up to 5 years in prison. So the federal authorities are going to come down pretty hard on people they arrest, I think.
Now, the president's also talked about sending National Guard troops to Chicago next. And we heard a bit of the governor of Illinois, who's clearly not happy about the idea.
Yeah, this would usually happen if the governor, or say the mayor of Chicago, was requesting outside assistance. So to do it without their request is very unusual. And when it happened in Los Angeles earlier this year, it was to support the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is a federal body that was going in and raiding premises and areas in Los Angeles to try and arrest illegal migrants. And then there were protesters who were trying to get in the way of that. And so we think that's the blueprint, rather than the Washington, D.C. situation where Trump has a lot more control. We think the blueprint for Chicago will be Los Angeles, where they may go in support of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They may go in support of other federal bodies like the FBI if they have a raid to try and arrest some criminals that they know about that for some reason haven't been targeted by the local authorities. But it remains to be seen the exact justification for going in, actually.
And presumably the idea of all of this is just simply to send out the message that the Trump administration is there to get tough on crime.
Yeah, I do think there's an element of theatre and showmanship to what Trump does, of course.
No, really?
That's possibly part of it, I think, Carol. Yeah, possibly. But some of his other initiatives are causing nervousness among his supporters, like his tariffs. And this is a very core issue for the Republicans, the law and order. And perhaps now they're beginning to refocus on next year's midterm elections and trying to produce some other results beyond bringing down prices, which doesn't seem to be going that well at the moment, with these very high profile and eye-catching deployments.
David Charter, Assistant US Editor of The Times. Great to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol.